Thoughts on Gus Hall's Bill of Rights Socialism? Well, Gus Hall's Bill of Rights Socialism, there's a pamphlet that the Communist Party, it was like one of the only pamphlets they would ever hand out in Cleveland. It was called Bill of Rights Socialism USA. It's basically socialism with American characteristics. I think it was written more in the context of the Cold War. And I think he came up with the concept in the 60s, Bill of Rights Socialism. It's what the Communist Party, if you talk to the Communist Party USA, they would say, we're in favor of Bill of Rights Socialism. And the reason they would say that is because most people believed in the United States that communism was synonymous with suppression of civil liberties, right? That's a really common, I remember hearing that when I was a kid, right? That people thought communism meant dictatorship. Communism just means suppression of civil liberties. So the Communist Party, in order to communicate that they wanted civil liberties, they would say, well, we're for Bill of Rights Socialism. And then Gus Hall would say, the American people wouldn't accept the U.S. Constitution without a Bill of Rights. They won't accept socialism without it either. If you read it, it's basically, Gus Hall is just kind of saying in the pamphlet, look, we believe in civil liberties. We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in freedom of religion. We believe in these things, and that other socialist countries may not have these things. But we believe that in the United States, when we have socialism, it'll have to have American freedoms in it. That's what he's saying. And that's more or less, he's more or less saying socialism with American characteristics. He's giving a special emphasis to civil liberties. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good piece of writing. Look, one thing about the Communist Party, even now, as hard as it is now to admit this, one thing I will say, even about the Communist Party, it's just part of their heritage. Their writing and their publications are way better because they were the Soviet-aligned party in the United States. They were representative of the Communist International, and they were aligned with the Soviet Union after the Communist International dissolved. And because of that, they had to act like a real political party. Now, we know that especially after McCarthyism, they were not that. They were a fringe element, and even in their stronger days, they were always like radical. They were not like a mainstream party. But because of the fact that they were aligned with a huge country called the Soviet Union, and they were aligned with a huge network of communist parties around the world, they couldn't act like buffoons. They had to act serious. Right. And that's why if you read Gus Hall's writings, I've got some of it here, right? You read, what is it? Working Class USA, The Power and the Movement. It's very coherent, right? Because if Gus Hall had acted like a buffoon, he would have been out of a job. The Soviet Union was going to make sure that, that they were, the guy who was representing their movement in the United States sounded like a real politician. You watch some of the ads that Gus Hall made on television. He sounds like a real politician. And that's one thing about the Communist Party USA. Even today, a lot of their literature, the way it's written, it sounds like a real political party, right? Go and read anything written by Bob Avakian. Go and read a Bob Avakian book. Does that sound serious politically? No, right? I mean, go to the RCP website. I'm going to just pull up the latest Bob Avakian article. I have no idea what it is, right? I have no idea what it is. I'm just going to pull up the latest Bob Avakian article. I'm going to read it to you, right? And I can, and you will understand. You will understand what I'm talking about, right? Important statement by Bob Avakian. In my statement of August 1st last year, I put forward the analysis that in particular circumstances, this presidential election and the truly profound stakes posted, if the Trump-Pence regime remained in power at the time of the election, it would be necessary for the important vote of Biden to deliver a decisive electoral defeat to fascism represented by this regime. Holy shit, that is a run-on sentence. At the same time, I mean, but there you go. Let's get into some of his theoretical work. I mean, it's gobbledygook, right? It's like incoherent, ultra revolutionary sounding gobbledygook, right? I mean, a lot of Bob's stuff, you read it, it's gobbledygook, right? It's he's got, what is it? This book about, oh goodness, the what is it? Crocodiles cannot give birth to song sparrows. The Soviet Union would never have allowed themselves to be represented by this. Birds cannot give birth to crocodiles. That is the name of one of his books. The Soviet Union would never have been represented by somebody who put out a book with a title like that, right? Yeah, I mean, here we go. The new synthesis is, in a real sense, a work in progress, as I am still actively applying myself to leading to learning from many sources. Hopefully, this new synthesis will continue to further develop and enrich ongoing work in the theoretical realm of the dialectical relation to the further developments in the world, particularly the advance of revolutionary struggle whose ultimate aim is the communist world. But it is incorrect to say that as a result of the work I carried out over a number of decades, summing up the experience of the communist revolution and socialist states and drawing from many diverse spheres of human activity and thought, there is already a further qualitative development in the science of communism that is embodied by the fundamental orientation, method, approach, core elements, and new synthesis. Because of the importance of what this represents, the importance of presenting this in the form of both concise and concentrated as well as accurate rendering, to the service as a grounding basic guideline to encourage and facilitate the further engagement of this new synthesis, I have written the following outline. I mean, it's like, try to make sense of the new synthesis. Like it's gobbledygook, right? The Soviet Union would never have allowed, like, but the Communist Party never, they always were very to the point because they had to act like a real political party, right? We'll pull up, let's watch a Gus Hall ad here, right? I mean, Gus Hall had to appear, he had to wear a suit. He had to appear like a real presidential candidate. Here's a Gus Hall ad, right? Here's one of his like very few times he had an ad on television. But we'll put it on. Well, this is a Gus Hall campaign ad, right? Right, this is from 1972. This is a television ad for the Communist Party. Compare it to anything Bob Avakian has ever done. I don't even know what that means, but hey, that's cool. I think that's someone's like saying I'm cool or something. So I'll take it. All righty. Thank you for the super chat. But yeah, here, this is a Gus Hall ad, right? This is one thing about the Communist Party that I will commend them for. This sounds like a real candidate.
There's no question we have the best program.
Gus Hall, General Secretary of the Communist Party, is the communist candidate for president. A former steel worker, he has been a union organizer and strike leader. And now, Gus Hall.
Good evening. Tomorrow the votes will be cast and counted. The 1972 elections will be history, but the issues will continue to be with us. In the past weeks, we have seen a flurry of activity about peace in Vietnam, and frankly, it is still in grave doubt. As welcome as peace is, whenever it is achieved, the American people have a right to know why it has taken 4 years, the lives of 22,000 Americans, and 1 million Vietnamese, 13 million bombs, and $60 billion. Peace could have been attained the day Nixon was inaugurated. The basic proposals which the Nixon administration has now agreed to were proposed by the North Vietnamese even before Nixon was elected president. The only thing that has changed is that President Nixon now faces an election. After 4 years of escalated aggression and non-continuous reneging on terms he's already agreed to, how can anyone trust Nixon to carry out the agreement after November 7th? The fact is that whichever of the two candidates wins tomorrow, our country's problems will not disappear. 40% of the workers' wages will still go for taxes, while over a third of the big corporations will continue to pay no taxes at all. A third of our people will still be living in rat-infested slum housing. The elderly will still suffer neglect. Poverty will continue to grow like a slow cancer. The government will continue to pour billions of dollars into tanks, guns, warplanes, and bombs. The ugly specter of racist oppression, now fanned by Nixon's open racist appeals, will continue to poison and stalk the land. Wages of workers will sink even deeper into the Arctic wage freeze, while prices, taxes, and rents will continue to skyrocket. And you can be sure corporate profits will continue to set new records. The Republican and Democratic candidates have not presented any meaningful new solutions, and they never can, because they are hogtied to the system of corporate profits. Meaningful solutions must of necessity step on the toes of big business. Corporate godfathers always squeal when you make them pay the taxes. We communists are unalterably against the system of corporate profits, which breeds wars of aggression, racism, and poverty. In this struggle, it is necessary not only to step on the toes of the monopoly corporations, but it's necessary to step on their necks. We are for dismantling big business power and replacing it with people's power. In this election, as always, there is a choice between a more reactionary and a more liberal candidate, but both basically represent the interest of big business. We say the time is ripe for political independence, the only path to people's power. In the 72 elections, the Communist Party serves as that people's alternative. A vote for the communist candidates is a vote against an ultra-right, racist, anti-labor lame duck Nixon. A vote for the communist candidate is more than just a protest vote. It is a vote against poverty, war, racism, and exploitation, but it is also a vote for positive action for working class unity, the unity of blacks, Chicanos, Puerto Ricans, Indian, and white working people. It is the one vote that expresses the people's outrage at the steady decay of overall quality of life. A vote for the communist candidate is a vote of struggle, a struggle for a better life. Thank you.
Tomorrow, make your vote count. Vote for the communist candidates, Gus Hall for president, Jarvis Tyner for vice president, and the local communist candidates. If they're not on the ballot in your state, write in the names Gus Hall and Jarvis Tyner. For more information, write to 23 West 26th Street, New York, New York.
That's still their office. Anyway, but, you know, or here's a much shorter ad from Gus Hall. And I mean, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, there's a much shorter ad here.
Communist Party presidential candidate.
There was an old song that went, everything is higher, it's sure outrageous. Yes, everything is higher except my daddy's wages. Yes, everything is higher, and it is outrageous. Taxes, unemployment, racism, rent gouging, meat and grocery prices, all of these troubles pile higher with each new year, while the incumbent politicians try to show what? That there is a decrease in the rate of increase, that the problems are not getting worse as fast as before. Re-election of Nixon will be a disaster for working people, but the election of McGovern will not cure these problems either. Working people need a working people's alternative. This year, the alternative on the ballot is the Communist Party. It is the most meaningful vote in 1972.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like a real political leader, right? I mean, that's what I admire about the Communist Party. And that's why reading their books and their literature is much more productive, because even though they were fringe, they had to some degree or other, act like a serious political party. Gus Hall had to put on a suit and tie and give a speech that made sense, right? And because they were held to higher standards, they had to act like a real political party, right? And that is one thing about the Communist Party that I've always admired, is that even after they stopped being a real political party, they act like it. And if you go to their website is very professional. It's very well put together. And their ideas are bullshit, but they state them very clearly. They can tell you what they believe in, what they advocate, and that is what we need. And you listen to Bob Avakian talking about crocodiles and birds and, I